Hello booktube, hello book friends, welcome back to my channel and another tag video. This time this is the perfection of reading book tag, which was created by Lekden at Reading from the Depths. I was tagged by Lekden, so thank you Lekden. And this is another tag related to the Tibetan Buddhist religion. Lekden says the Tibetan Buddhist instruction to live a meaningful life is to try to live the life of, and I'm going to mash this, Modhistaffa. I'm sorry if I've got that completely wrong. A person or being who is totally dedicated their life to benefiting others. The six perfections, known as the pāramitās in Sanskrit, are six types of enlightened activity that make the bodhisattvas conduct, which ordinary people are encouraged to try and realize in their own lives. This original book tag is celebrating those six and exploring how they might be reflected in our reading lives. So there are six prompts. In addition to answering each prompt, Lekden suggests to recommend a book that you feel embodies that particular perfection as you understand it. It's okay if it is the same as your answer to the prompt. So I quite like this tag, so I've got a stack of books in front of me, and I'll see what I can do in terms of answering each of the prompts. So prompt number 1, the perfection of generosity. What is an experience of either book gifting or book receiving that was meaningful or memorable for you? Now, I have talked about this one before when I did the 8 memories tag, and in that I talked about this particular book. Now, the reason this particular book, which I was given, is particularly memorable to me, is this number 10. So this is Peter Adams's story. It's non-fiction account of the Battle for Monte Cassino in Italy in 1944 during the Second World War. And this is Monte Cassino, 10 Armies in Hell. And the reason this is significant to me is because this book was given to me by my wife on our 10th anniversary. And for a number of years, she would find a book that had the relevant number of our anniversary and give it to me on that particular day. So I have a number of numbered books. So this is number 10. And then this is number 16. So this is Lars Mitting's the 16 Trees of the Somme, which is a novel, and is, I think it's a brilliant book. I would recommend this. I'll quickly read the copy on the back. Edvard grows up on a remote mountain farmstead in Norway with his taciturn grandfather. The death of his parents when he was 3 years old has always been shrouded in mystery. Edvard's desperate quest to unlock the family secret takes him on a long journey from Norway to the Shetlands and to the battlefields of France to the discovery of a very unusual inheritance. The 16 Trees of the Somme is a finely crafted mystery about the love of wood and finding your own self, a beautifully intricate and moving tale that spans an entire century. And it is a fantastic book. So that's my book related to the perfection of generosity. So books that I received on my anniversary for many years. I think the only thing that stops it is if she can't find a book for that particular number. So number 2, the perfection of ethical discipline. What are your best and worst reading habits? I think my best is that I make time for reading every day. And that might just be half an hour at bedtime, but more often than not, I try and allocate an hour, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, at some point during the day to read. And that might be, one block, it might be, half an hour in the morning, hour and a half in the evening, whatever. Don't watch TV, so there's plenty of opportunity really to do that. But I think saying that that is the time that I am going to sit down and read something, either what I'm currently reading or start a new book or whatever. My worst habit is probably having more books than I can never read. I've seen a book that I've wanted. I very often end up buying it. I might save the details of it for if it's a hardback for when it comes out in paperback or when it's on sale or whatever. But buying books is my kryptonite, I think. Number 3, The Perfection of Patience. What is a book that you anxiously waited for, and did it live up to the expectations you set for it? Okay, bit of backstory for this one. Back just before the COVID pandemic really started, so end of 2019, sort of January, February of 2020, I started listening to a podcast which is called We Have Ways of Making You Talk, and it is a historical podcast about the Second World War. So all sorts of different aspects of the Second World War. From at the moment, there's obviously been looking at VE Day and things, but back then, it was very different. One of the hosts is James Holland, who is also a historian and writer, and I've got a number of his books. And as the pandemic hit and everything started to lock down, he realised that he wasn't going to be able to finish the book he was working on because he couldn't get to the archives and the places that he needed to because they were shut and so on. So he started thinking, well, what makes, and he was kind of talking about this at the time on the podcast. And he said, well, I've got enough information to write a book I've been researching for a number of years about, we would call a territorial army unit now, but at the time was kind of a reserve unit called the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, who were basically a cavalry unit who quickly went from horses to tanks during the beginning of the Second World War. So they were a tank regiment. And he started to talk about this book as he was kind of writing it, pretty much. And I got really kind of drawn into that, and was listening to it kind of once or twice a week. And I have to say, the podcast really got me through lockdown and the pandemic and everything, because it gave me something beyond the four walls of my house that I could kind of do. And then ultimately, the book became a reality. I can't remember, it was published in 2021. 2021. So it was published in 2021, and I've mentioned the book on the podcast on the channel before. So it's James Holland's Brothers in Arms, and it follows the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry from landing in Normandy on a part of Operation Overlord on D-Day to VE Day, so Victory in Europe Day in 1945, and it more than lived up to my expectations. I mean, this book doesn't mess about. It shows war as how it really is, what a bloody horrible mess it is. This book brought me to tears. It is a I would recommend it. It's a fantastic book for an account of a single kind of regiment, a single unit account is a brilliant book. So I recommend that as well. So what was that? Was 3, so 4. The Perfection of Joyful Effort. What is a book or series that you found difficult to complete but found to be ultimately worthwhile? Now, again, this relates in a way to the COVID pandemic, but also relates to my love of political cartoons. So back in 2019, when Boris Johnson's Tory government was elected, became the government of the country, the artist and cartoonist Chris Riddell started publishing a daily cartoon on kind of Instagram and Twitter, I think, of kind of the news of the day related. Yeah, so it was a political cartoon, and he said at the time that this is my way of kind of, you know, getting through what's going on, the madness of, the fact that we've got a buffoon for a prime minister. And he said he was going to do it for the entirety of the parliament, which is 5 years, unless there's an election called before. So he did it from 2019 to end of last year, 2024. So we had the election in 24, but he did it to the end of the year. And then as a result of doing that, he also published a compendium of the year's cartoons at the beginning of the next year. So there are 5 volumes. Now, there are 4 of them up there, and I've got the first one here to show you. And the first one is pretty much, so if you think it's the end of Trump's first term, it's the beginning of Boris Johnson's time in power, and it's when COVID hits. So it's the end of this first volume is kind of partway through 2019. So it starts on 15th of December and runs to, no, sorry, it starts on the 13th of December and runs, so 13th December 2019 runs to the end of 31st of December 2020. And let me just kind of, so as you can imagine, there are, and it's Brexit, and it's really, and the reason I've picked this, I mean, the cartoons are, fantastic. They're pretty much all black and white, I think. Some of them are relevant to what was going on at the time. But, and I really found these hard to, although I was reading the individual cartoons every day, mostly on Instagram, when these were published, I was really struggling to get through, having to go kind of back to the beginning of the year and then relive the kind of horror, particularly the first couple of years when it was, COVID and Brexit and Trump and, anyway, I think ultimately it was worthwhile. This, I think to me, this shows just how messed up government was then and still is to an extent. So yeah, that's my answer. All right, just got to precariously balance books off screen. I've lost my place again. That was 4, wasn't it? Yeah, 5. The perfection of concentration. What do you do, if anything, to get in a reading zone? What is your ideal reading environment? I think in terms of ideal reading environment, it's somewhere quiet, not necessarily silent, but quiet. I normally read lying on the sofa or lying in bed. So I guess lying there. But when I used to commute to work, I'd read on the train on a fairly uncomfortable train seat. So I can pretty much read anywhere. But this is, say, ideal is, yeah. What do I do to get into a reading zone? I kind of mentally say to myself, right, now I'm going to read for an hour. And that's all I will do. I might have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or glass of water or whatever, but that's my time. I am going to read. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not getting my phone out to so yeah. Number 6, final question, final prompt. The perfection of wisdom. What is a book where you learn something, especially something unexpected, whether profound or mundane? If you've watched any of my videos for any period of time, you'll know that Winston Churchill is someone I admire for all of his flaws. And some of the things that he is known for. So he's known, obviously, as a great statesman, as a war leader. Did you also know he's known as a bricklayer or an artist? And I think is not particularly considered to be that good at either. But I think what I found a couple of years ago, I saw and bought this book. So this is Winston Churchill painting on the French Riviera, and this is a collection of about his time painting, but also some of the things, some of the pictures that he was painting at the time, going back to where he was when he painted them. So he did a lot of landscapes, mostly landscapes. And does it say? Yeah, so it says here, in an adventurous and enviable life, he was a military officer, political leader, prolific writer, enthusiastic bricklayer, bon vivant, butterfly breeder, and passionate painter. So a lot of this doesn't, I mean, it's there, but it doesn't really, you don't really get to. During the fullest of lives, Churchill found time to paint over 600 canvases, a figure that continues to climb with new discoveries. So they're always finding, half-completed canvases and so on. Of these, more than 150 were painted in the south of France. So this is kind of a collection of some of those. So, as I say, this to my mind, I mean, I'm a crap artist, it has to be said, but to my mind, some of the pictures that he paints, I mean, I think these are good. So that is a painting taken from there, and I'll try not to damage the book, but I'll show you a couple more if I can. So he's okay, maybe not so great picture of, but some of them are just fantastic. Let's find a good one. He says, of course, you can never do that when you want to. Should have been better prepared, Alan. You should have. Right. So painting, painted. But anyway, I think that gets fairly mundane. But you know, the fact that he wrote so many books and so on. Yeah, so that was kind of unexpected. You know, I'd always kind of never really seen very many of his paintings. And then to have kind of been told that, well, he wasn't a very good painter, which perhaps was jealousy from others, I don't know. But, always be told not very good painter. And then to get hold of this book and realise, actually, you know what, he's not a bad painter, Anyway, that's the 6 perfections or the 6 prompts. There is an opportunity to tag others, which I will do down in the description below. But if you have been, thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.